to you a wee bit today, very informally, about some of what I've been looking at over the last year and a half about Patrick Quinn. And really, what I'm going to be talking about today is just scratching the surface of what I've been discovering over the last little while. You probably all know who Patrick Quinn is at this stage of the week, so I'm sure first of all you recognise this. So Pretty Peggy, Quinn's Burns March, or third tune, set, or Pretty Peggy. So this was in the back of manuscript 33-1, which I have a copy of it here. So the manuscript was like this, and then lots of blank pages, and then he turned around and started again at the other side. And all the tunes in this little section appear to be from Patrick Quinn, and appear to be collected from and sat down beside him as draft recordings writing out what he was playing. So in this section there's the first tune, what he says, the first tune, Molly Vaughan. There's also this third tune, Quinn's Burns March, and there's another wee bit of this tune which is another on another page, says this belongs to Quinn, to Burns March. So part of what I've been doing over the last bit is looking first of all at what we know, because there hasn't really been an awful lot of information about him, and looking through all the sources, all the standard sources on our library here, and seeing where is there some information about Patrick Quinn, and putting them into chronological order to see what's right and what's not right, because you start to see all these things that he was born in Portadown, he was born in Armagh, and there are all these contradictions. So that's part of what I've been just looking at first of all. So one, for example, before looking into any sort of newspaper archives, just from going through the standard sources that we would have here, the first reference I found was 1809 in Belfast Monthly Magazine, and it says it was a collection of poems and were being reviewed, and it says in the notes Mr. Arthur O'Neill is described as the only harper in Ireland. Patrick Quinn of Portadown has perhaps superior merit to O'Neill. So, because you don't hear about that much really about it. And then 1819, and I was looking to see if we had a copy of this. John Bernard Trotter walks through Ireland in 1812, 1814, 1817, so it's a series of letters, and he talks about, he searched out one of the last of the Irish harpers, whom he found in the person of a blind old man, and taking the bard on his harp into a coach and 4 horses, he proceeded with his venerable companion to the metropolis. So this is 1809, and Quinn was brought from Portadown to Dublin, and this period from 1809 to 1812 is the period that we know most about it. That's where most of the information is. And just before I go on, there's a great little article I found here in 1938, and it's in the Belfast Newsletter, and I won't read it all. He talks about Quinn going from Portadown to Belfast, and he plays St. Patrick's Day as one of the tunes that he was famous for putting it onto the harp. And J.B. Trotter tells in his walks through Ireland how he singled out Paddy Quinn at Portadown when he was a very old man and took him, harp and all, to Dublin to show them there how the Irish harp was played. So you can the language of it was great. So anyway, you might go there. No, I think this was at the end of the summer school, so I look completely well. So you'll all see this on the field trip on Tuesday. So this is the Otway harp, of which this is a simple student model. So the Otway harp is owned now by Trinity College Dublin, but it's in storage, and they bring it out especially for us to go and see it on the field trip, and you can probably recognise some people in that group. So So that was Patrick Quinn's harp, and the Trinity College called it the Castle Otway harp, and that was, if you want to read a little bit more prior to going up to Dublin, Armstrong, the Irish and Highland harps, he writes in this whole section on the Otway harp. And there's a little bit of information in this also about Patrick Quinn, but he doesn't really include much new information. The only new information that's in that, I think he mentions in 1899 an engraved portrait of Quinn was exhibited at the Musical Loan exhibition in Feshkill. So that was something that hasn't appeared anywhere else. So, in summer school 2013, we were over in the across the road, the Kilkenny School of Music, and Simon was doing a talk matching tunes to harps. And he was going through a lot of the different harps and what repertoire we had that was connected to each one. And he put this up on the screen, and we read through it. Nancy Cooper by Caroline, blah, blah, blah. And at the bottom, and I'm sorry that's cut off, but the digital print's cut off. From Paddy Quinn, County Armagh, near the Blue Stone. And I was sitting there thinking, I know where that is. And that's it there. So this is, I wasn't born, but I lived down the road from there a bit. And this is, it's about, where's Paul? It's about 3 miles outside Lurgan. Yeah. It's not the name of an area, it's named after a blue stone. And the blue stone was in behind that, it's like a T-junction, a Y-junction of the road. And there were murders, and the murderers were buried at the blue stone. And their friends wanted to take the bodies away. And the magistrate came in and said, no, you can't take bodies. And he dug up the bodies, burned them, and replaced them, and put the blue stone that was a landmark here, buried up that as well on top of the bodies, and then built the road and over the top of it. So that's the blue stone, but there was a lot of pretty turbulent history and incidents that would have happened afterwards. So I'm not sure, those murders that I was talking about were 1781, and I think it was around 1800 that Quinn got that tune. So although the blue stone was no longer visible, it was still a meeting place, and it was a well-known meeting place in that area. And I went to look at it again, and around the corner from it, off a little tiny road, is a place called Lissamintry Rath, which is a really early farm settlement, 500 to 1000 AD is what it's dated, I'm not sure. But so that's just around the corner, and it's a wonderful, wonderful little place. So I went in there and I hung Nancy Cooper for Patrick Quinn. Most of what we know and most of what's quoted in all the sources, or quoted or misquoted, comes from Bunting. Bunting, 1840, and this is what he says about Quinn. Of those who attended at Belfast, so that's 1792, the Harpers gathering in Belfast, the youngest and consequently the last in this list, he's just gone through and listed all the Harpers, were Patrick Quinn of Portadown in the county of Armagh and William Carr of the same county. The former born around 1745, the latter in 1777. Quinn had been taught by Patrick Linden of the Fuse, County Armagh, a distinguished performer and poet. And Eamon mentioned about that whole tradition last year in a lecture, which is available on YouTube actually, if anyone's interested in following that. He was selected to play at the meeting in commemoration of Caroline, held at the Rotunda in Dublin in 1809, and was so elated by his commendations he received for his performance on that occasion that on his return to his own residence he declined playing any longer on the violin, from which he had hitherto reaped a good harvest by performing at weddings and merry weddings in his neighbourhood. it's worthy of remark that Quinn was the only harper at Belfast meeting who attempted to play Patrick's Day, of which he was very proud, having set, or as he expressed it, fixed it for the harp. So that's really, it's that little chunk of information is most of what is being quoted and quoted by people, and sometimes they say he was a native of Portadown, or so. 1905, Francis Bigger wrote an article, which is what I call my talk after Patrick Quinn, the Armagh harper, and he again quoted from Bunting, and he had the engraving that you saw in the first slide, and he said that very little is known about his life, so any other information about his burial case or anything like that would be very welcome. So, I was actually with Siobhan attending Benburb last year, and Eamon was there, and it was a commemoration of Arthur O'Neill bicentenary. And I was chatting beforehand to a man called Frank Bunting, who was a descendant of Edward Bunting, and I was telling him, I was interested in Queen, and he said, oh, I'll send you a few things because I'm doing some work on this. And he sent me a reference to a newspaper article that had appeared just a few years ago. The date wasn't actually on it, and I wasn't able to find it online. I think it was 2013 in the Irish News. And this article, I sort of read it and thought, that's really strange, because I'd read all the sources at this stage, and there was lots of information that I wasn't seeing anywhere else. And anyway, so I found, I wrote to the author of the article, and he said, well, actually, I wrote that article, yes, but it was based on a much longer article that was published in 1946 on the 1st of August. And so it's a full article on Patrick Quinn that was published in 1946. I'm not going to read all of it to you, but I'm going to read some parts of it to you, because I'll just read it from here. It's a little easier. Now bear in mind that all we've really known about him was that he played in 1809 at the Carlow Commemoration, that he was from Portadown, that he was at Harper's meeting in 1792. He played Patrick's Day. Also in 1840 we have a copy of the tunes that he played in 1792, which was published in the newsletter at Belfast. So this is what this article said. Mary Ann Trotter of Downpatrick, County Down, the great friend of Quinn, has left us in her own handwriting this account of the blind harper. And the author of the article also describes Mary Ann Trotter as a patroness of Quinn. So I think she's related to John Bernard Trotter, who brought him to Dublin in 1809. So this is a section of the article that relates to Mary Ann Trotter's account. Paddy Quinn was born in Abbey Lane, which is why I have this map here, so you'll not be able to see it, but this is a map, an old map of Armagh. So Paddy Quinn was born in Abbey Lane, Armagh, on the 1st day of August, 1746. So 1745, if this is a true account, 1745 is not far wrong. I think he was maybe just before his 47th birthday when he was in Belfast. His father was John Quinn, a most respectable chandler in that ancient city, candlemaker, I think. At the age of 8 years, Paddy became stone blind, but up to that time had been taught by Mr. Clark to read and write. He played on the fiddle with one Simon Donnelly, so we have the name of his fiddle teacher, who was an instructor to many fashionable young gentlemen of the city and county. He then went to live in the Fuse with his father's cousin, Pat Linden, the poet and performer on the harp. In 1778, Paddy went to live with his uncle Hugh Quinn, a tenant on the estate of Colonel Blacker. And I was in the office just as Siobhan was printing out the programmes, and I saw a picture of, you can see it in the programme, a beautiful woman, and Blacker. And I thought, that. But again, I felt the resonance of it, because when I was a child, my dad had, he kept cattle on the Carrickblacker estate. So, and I had a pony that wasn't broken in, so I had to give it away again. But on the same place, and so again, I felt this sort of connection.
Did we know about the connection between Paddy Quinn and Lyndon's before that he was a cousin?
No. This is the first time this has come out, yes. If it's true, I haven't found this account, this handwritten account yet, and hopefully I will, maybe I won't, maybe it's fabricated, you don't know. But so he went to live in 1778 with his uncle Hugh Quinn, a tenant of the estate of Colonel Blacker, who made much of him at his house gatherings of quality. He later moved to Portadown and was engaged as performer at weddings in the country around. I first met him at Castle Dillon, the beautiful seat of Sir Capel Molyneux. So I don't know if you know where that is. This is on the road between Armagh and Portadown. And I'm going to show you a map in a little bit so you'll see the real place where these places are. And again, I was telling my mother this, and she said, "Oh, your grandmother stayed there. That was where she spent her last days." It was Castle Dillon at one point, was a nursing home. And so I feel this sort of string is Sir Capel was a very vain gentleman, for he drove to Armagh every day in a coach covered with heraldic emblems, drawn in by 6 horses, 3 postilions, and he was partial to music and played the fiddle himself. Sir Capel attired Paddy in blue velvet breeches, white hose, buckled shoes, scarlet coat with white frills. Though Paddy was a much devoted Roman Catholic, he was greatly respected by the nobility and gentry of County Armagh, who were for the most part very zealous Protestants, and the clergy of the established church had him in their homes. He once performed the Lord Primate's command in the Cathedral of Armagh, for lords and ladies and great gentlemen and all the rest. And she also said, "I heard him perform at the Harp Festival in Belfast in 1792 and at the Rotunda in Dublin, and I did so admire his nimble skill." Poor Paddy died 2 years ago, so if I can find where this is, we know when he actually died, and was laid to rest with his 4 fathers in Drumcree churchyard. And if anybody knows the history, I'm not going to start with it, but it's very interesting. So that's this is what we're talking about. We're down here, Kilkenny, Dublin. This is Armagh, and this is roughly the Fuse area, which is South Armagh region. It's not very far. I had to make those big just so you would see it, but they're Armagh City and South Armagh is very close. And this is Portadown. And I put Belfast in here where Belfast Harp Festival was. He was brought to Dublin. So you can see very much the area that he was in, and there's another little question mark there that we have, that's Antrim, I think, that I've marked there, because there's mention that he played in Shane's Castle, and quite a number of other places. But so this for me was remarkable to me, this all this information that we didn't have. And so that I found this in the National Library in Dublin, and that evening, no, I'm not going to tell you that story yet. So, this is the slide I showed you at the beginning, and really the period that when I started to, once I've gone through all the other sources, when I started to go through what might be there in the newspaper archives, I found lots of information. So I was expecting maybe to find 1 or 2 little articles where it might have been mentioned, maybe the Caroline commemoration, but I was finding an awful lot more. So one was when this engraving was brought out, it was the Monthly Pantheon was a magazine in Dublin. It was issue number 17 of the Monthly Pantheon, and the advertisement went out. Will be published next Wednesday to be embellished with a fine likeness of the Venerable Patrick Quinn, engraved by Brocas from exquisite painting by Miss Trotter. As one of the last harpers, together with the sweetness of his tones and his situation in the Dublin Harp Society, Quinn became an object of much interest and curiosity. So he was brought to Dublin 1809. He played for the Carolan commemoration, which Bunting tells us, and he was to be the teacher of the Irish Harp Society in Dublin. There had already been an Irish Harp Society started up in Belfast subsequent to the 1792, and so Quinn was brought to Dublin as a teacher. Another newspaper described the engraving as, this engraving has perhaps never been equalled in Ireland. So, there's lots, I found articles about the commemoration because there was one and then there was another. And Quinn was basically, he wasn't the main attraction. It was all the male musicians of the day, and this commemoration was for Carolan. It was the first time it was being done. And it's only referred to just briefly in Bunting, but in the newspaper articles of the day, it talks about there were thousands of people that couldn't get in, and so they did it again. The streets were lined with carriages, but I won't attempt to do those articles because I want to move on. And there was a newspaper magazine article in, I can't remember when it was, 2009, oddly. Yeah, and it was titled "Newly Discovered Portrait of Patrick Quinn of Harper." I can't remember exactly the title. And Brian Audley was brought to the museum in Belfast because they suspected, I think that had been originally thought to be Carolan, and they suspected that this was, they wanted to see if they could find some information about who this was. And anyway, he identified it as Patrick Quinn. And what's interesting, if you look at this one compared to the other engravings, look at the harps. There, and then do this harp. So
that looks exactly like the harp.
Well, that's the Otway harp. But this is the first, seeing this painting and identifying it as Quinn was the first time that was really proof that it was Patrick Quinn's. So I was telling you about finding the big newspaper article in the National Library. And as I was coming home, I got a phone call from a friend of mine, her father, and he rang me up and he said, "You've been back in Armagh for 3 years and we haven't had you for dinner. Come for dinner on Sunday." So I said, okay. So we went for dinner, we were chatting, and I was all fired up about this, and I was telling him what I was doing. And he said, "That's funny, because I remember visiting an old man, and he used to have a painting on his wall of a harper." So I said, "Oh, that's very interesting." Can you find out anything more about it? So he said, well, I don't know, the old man's dead, and we don't know, if it's going to be possible. But the next day, I got an email from him to say, "I found it. It's a blind harper. It's Carolan." And he sent me the picture. He'd taken a photograph of it. So this. Now, so the size of this, it's similar size to these boards on that way, maybe a little bit smaller. And I was invited to go and look at it, and we got some photographs. So you can see that this is actually very small in real life, and that was a pencil and watercolour. And this is the original, what we reckon this is the original oil painting on which the pencil and watercolour was done. And you can actually get a jigsaw of this if you go to the Belfast Museum. Discover one on it. Well, you can get it on Amazon. Discover it. I didn't get it. Reading up about this, I went back to all these articles and it's not on the museum website, but there's a little line saying that this was after Thomas Robinson. So I started looking up Thomas Robinson, who's he now, and looked at it, found another painting of his. And what you see is not what you see online. So online is a very blackened painting of him, and it's in Castle Ward, which is up in County Down. And it's a big National Trust house. And it was much darker than this, what I saw originally, and I looked at it and I thought, hey, what's this?
Oh,
So you can just about make out the harp. And now in the other one you could hardly, you could just see like a little vague little shapes. So I went up to Castle Ward to see.
Can you point out the harp again? It's hard to see.
Here.
Well, I see. Oh, now it's
Yes.
Yes. So I went up to Castle Ward and paid my £9 in, and I said I want to go and see the painting that has the harp in it. And said, oh no, that room's not open today. And in fact, no, they didn't know which painting had a harp in it. They'd never noticed the harp.
Turn out the lights so quick.
Yeah. But actually, you won't see very much anyway. So it's above the fireplace in the dining room of Castle Ward. And it's the title of the painting is A Group of Dilettanti. It's the Bishop of Dromore. I need to find out.
Something folded. I'm sure it's going to the fold on the table.
Yeah, I know. I wondered that originally, but it's not. It's not. Yeah, I've seen it. So I went into the room. They let me go into the room, and they lit it all up, and was able to get this photograph. And I'm quite sure, because I had my photograph of the painting here, and I'm quite sure that this is the brass plate of the Otway harp at the front of it. There was a second watercolour done based on the harp, and it gives a list of all the people that were in attendance, and they've changed the shape of the harp in this, and the harper is much more prominent in this, and in the original he's just like a black shadow. Either the painting has been damaged or something, but he's not named. Everybody else is named, and this is just blind harper. So I'm wondering if it's possibly Quinn as well, but at that point it was before 1809, because we were able to date it from the painting. Anyway, so that's him close up. And what's very interesting for me, so I've been in the last few months, I've just been sitting with a copy of the Otway harp, and with him sitting up on my mantelpiece and looking at the hand positions, which are really very clear in this. You can see his bass hand he's got a dodgy thumb like I have. His bass hand his fourth finger is really quite spread out. And you can see his 2, 3 and 4 fingers are on the strings, and his thumb is sort of floating in the air. And you can even make out the rosettes here on the harp. And you can see in this one the decoration on the Otway, which you'll see. You can look out for this on Tuesday when you go. I was going to say one last little story, but I'm not going to do that. But I have other things here for you to have a look at.
Do tell me the story.
Well, I was going to read it because I just hang on. Just when I looked at this one up, where you can almost see his character, and this is a little anecdote, and it was written in 1809, and it was a letter that was sent to the Freeman's Journal, which is a paper in Dublin, and I'll read part of it. So the man that wrote it said, "From my very infantile days, being much accustomed and constantly delighted with the Irish harp's bewitching strains, having 2 very near and dear relatives, the greatest performers on that captivating instrument during the last century, I immediately visited the justly celebrated Patrick Quinn on his arrival being announced in Dublin. I have to say, I don't know who wrote this, and I don't know if we can work out who wrote this because he didn't sign it. I found him at the Harp Society Secretary's house, whether whether he had been invited to spend some time by its liberal owner. I introduced myself and was received with every polite attention, and on expressing the object of my visit, the harper was brought in, and he played directly one of the celebrated airs of Great Carolyn in a style and manner far superior to anything I had heard for the last 40 years, though I had entertained almost every itinerant harper who came within my reach for so long a period back. Not since the death of the last dear relative did I hear the Irish harp so played. And he goes on anyway. He talks about his when Quinn played, it was touched by such a skillful hand. My heart melted, a thrilling sensation ran through every vein, and the sympathetic tears stole down my cheek. And anyway, I could bear it no longer, so I told him, could I go away and would he come visit me, because I couldn't listen to any more that day. So anyway, he went away, and the next day, they didn't actually arrange a time, so Quinn went to visit him, knocked on the door, he wasn't there, so went to the next house up and knocked on that door. But those people, they'd had the plague or something, and they were all sick, and somebody had just died, and they weren't talking to anybody. And anyway, Quinn went in and sat down, and not knowing the depicted state of the family and grateful for the good-natured attention paid him, proposed playing a tune. They all hung down their heads and were silent. This he considered as consent and began, as if by inspiration. I'm in a room. So that's what he was. So we had more information about what he played. This soothed and tranquilized every soul present. Such charms are there in harp when touched with skill. Anyway, so he goes on. He tells a little bit more about the story. And Quinn said, yeah, but they were all fine. And from that day on, they all talked to everybody again. And it was, so that was the story to the paper. But it gives a little bit about, just gives a little bit of an insight into his character. So, very briefly, I'm on the way to have them an Otway replica made, and hopefully more tunes, more music. We've got some handouts just for everybody. Simon had prepared this already for his website, which was for the talk that I was talking about at the beginning, and I've added some more information that I find as I've gone through from newspaper articles as well, quite a few tunes. Fairy Queen, Out of the Moon, O'Rourke's Noble Feast, lots more. So there's a whole list of Quinn tunes there. Come and grab one. And thank you. Sorry for talking so